Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty's Dawn, watching the massive Galactic Nexus station grow larger through the main viewing window. The station looked like a giant metal flower floating in space with hundreds of docking arms reaching out in all directions. Ships from dozens of different alien species moved around it like busy insects. "Captain, we're getting a priority message from Earth Command," said communications specialist Ryan Taylor from his station. His voice carried a note of concern that made Morrison turn around. "Put it through to my ready room," Morrison replied. He walked into the small office next to the bridge and activated the communication screen. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez appeared, her face serious and tired. "Jake, we have a situation," she began without any greeting. "The Zephyrian Empire has formally challenged humanity to participate in the triannual fleet exhibition. It's happening in 3 days at the Concordia system." Morrison felt his stomach drop. The fleet exhibition was where the major powers of the galaxy showed off their military strength. It was part show, part threat, and part politics all rolled into one. "Admiral, with respect, shouldn't we send one of our newer ships? The Liberty's Dawn is what we have available," Rodriguez cut him off. "Every other vessel in the fleet is either on deep space patrol or undergoing repairs. You and your crew will represent humanity at this exhibition." Morrison looked around his ready room. The walls showed their age, with patches and repairs visible everywhere. The Liberty's Dawn had been in service for longer than most ships stayed. Operational. "Ma'am, the other species will have their most advanced vessels there. The Liberty's Dawn looks like an antique compared to what they're flying these days." "I'm aware of how our ship appears, Captain," Rodriguez said firmly, "but appearances can be deceiving. Your orders are to proceed to Concordia immediately and represent Earth with dignity. Do not let them intimidate you." The communication ended, leaving Morrison alone with his doubts. He returned to the bridge where Commander Alex Hayes was waiting with a concerned expression. "Sir, I couldn't help but overhear some of that," Hayes said quietly. "Are we really taking this old ship to compete with the most advanced vessels in the galaxy?" Morrison nodded slowly. "Those are our orders, Commander. Alert the crew. We're heading to Concordia." As the Liberty's Dawn prepared to leave the Nexus station, Morrison could see other ships in the docking area. A sleek Zephyrian destroyer hung nearby, its hull gleaming with energy shields that made it look like it was made of liquid metal. Further away, a crystalline collective vessel seemed to shift and change shape as he watched, its crystal structure refracting light in impossible ways. Chief Engineer Maria Santos joined them on the bridge. "Captain, I've completed the pre-flight checks. All systems are running normally, though I'm getting some strange readings from the core systems." "What kind of readings?" Morrison asked. Santos shrugged. "Nothing dangerous, just unusual. The power distribution patterns are different from what the manual says they should be. The ship's AI, Aegis, isn't giving me clear answers about it." "As long as everything works, don't worry about it," Morrison told her. He had more pressing concerns than minor technical anomalies. Navigation Officer Ben Clark spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm plotting our course to Concordia. We should arrive about 6 hours before the exhibition begins." As the Liberty's Dawn left the station, Morrison noticed that several alien vessels seemed to change course to follow them. Soon, his communication board lit up with incoming transmissions. "Captain, we're receiving multiple signals," Taylor reported. "Most of them appear to be, well, sir, they're not very polite." Morrison sighed. "Let's hear them." The bridge filled with various alien voices, some translated by the ship's computer, and others speaking in broken human language. The messages were all similar in tone. "Is that really the ship the humans are sending?" came one voice with a series of clicking sounds that the computer identified as Zephyrian. Another transmission, from what sounded like multiple voices speaking together, said, "The human vessel appears to be several centuries out of date. Are they making some kind of joke?" A third voice, cold and mechanical, added, "Perhaps humanity's seat on the Galactic Council needs to be reconsidered if this is the best they can offer." Hayes clenched his fists. "Sir, should we respond to these transmissions?" Morrison shook his head. No, Commander. We'll let our actions speak for us. But privately, Morrison wondered if Earth Command had made a terrible mistake. The Liberty's Dawn was a good ship and his crew was excellent, but they were about to face the most advanced military vessels in the galaxy. The ship's hull showed the scars of countless missions. Its weapons were standard kinetic projectiles, instead of the energy weapons most species used, and its design looked ancient compared to the sleek vessels following them. As they traveled through space toward Concordia, more ships joined their convoy. Morrison counted vessels from at least 20 different species, each one looking more advanced and threatening than the last. Some ships seemed to bend light around them, others appeared to phase in and out of reality, and a few looked like they were made of living metal that flowed and shifted constantly. "Captain," Santos called from her engineering station, "Aegis is acting strange. When I ask it about our ship's specifications, it keeps giving me incomplete answers. It's almost like it's hiding something." Morrison frowned. "What do you mean, hiding something?" "Well, when I ask about our maximum speed, it tells me the official rating. But when I check the actual engine output, we could go much faster. And our weapon systems have capabilities that aren't in any of the technical manuals." Before Morrison could respond, Taylor interrupted. "Captain, we're getting a direct transmission from the lead Zephyrian vessel. It's Admiral Klextar himself." The main screen flickered, and the image of a tall reptilian alien appeared. Klextar's scales were a deep blue color, and his yellow eyes looked at Morrison with obvious amusement. "Captain Morrison," Klextar said, his voice dripping with false politeness, "I wanted to personally welcome you to the exhibition. I must say your vessel is quite unique. We rarely see ships of such vintage still in active service." Morrison kept his expression neutral. "Admiral Klextar, the Liberty's Dawn has served humanity well for many years. We're honored to participate in the exhibition." Klextar's mouth opened in what Morrison assumed was supposed to be a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Indeed. I'm sure it will be quite educational for all involved. I do hope your ship meets the minimum safety requirements for the exhibition events." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison and his crew in angry silence. Hayes was the first to speak. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to show them exactly what this old ship can do." Morrison nodded grimly. "We will, Commander. We will." The Concordia system was spectacular and intimidating at the same time. Morrison watched from the bridge as hundreds of ships from across the galaxy gathered in formation around the system's largest moon. The vessels ranged from small escort ships to massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire planets. The Liberty's Dawn looked tiny and old among them. "Captain, we're being assigned docking coordinates," Clark reported from the navigation station. "They're putting us in Section 7. Hayes checked his tactical display and grimaced. "Section 7 is at the very back, sir. That's where they put the least important ships." Morrison nodded, having expected as much. "Take us in, Ben. Let's see what our accommodations look like." As they approached their assigned position, Morrison could see the ships around them. Most were from smaller, less powerful civilizations that the major powers barely acknowledged. The message was clear. Humanity was being grouped with the galaxy's minor players. "Sir, we're getting another communication," Taylor announced. "It's from the exhibition coordinators." A hologram appeared showing a tall, graceful alien with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Morrison recognized the species as Ethereal Consortium members, known for their advanced technology and condescending attitude toward younger civilizations. "Welcome to the Triannual Fleet Exhibition," the alien said in a voice that sounded like music. "I am Coordinator Veltar. Your vessel will participate in tomorrow's opening ceremonies, followed by the demonstration events over the next 3 days." The hologram paused, and Morrison could swear he saw the alien's expression become slightly amused. "I must inform you that several delegations have raised concerns about your vessel's ability to safely participate in the more advanced demonstration events. We may need to limit your participation to the basic maneuvers only." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. "Coordinator Veltar, The Liberty's Dawn meets all safety requirements and is fully capable of participating in any demonstration you care to arrange. Of course, Veltar replied with obvious disbelief. We shall see. The opening ceremonies begin at 800 tomorrow morning. Please ensure your vessel is prepared. After the communication ended, Santos approached Morrison with a worried expression. Captain, I've been running full diagnostics on all our systems. Everything checks out perfectly, but I'm still getting those strange readings from the core. What kind of readings? Morrison asked. It's like the ship has systems that aren't supposed to be there, Santos explained. The power output is much higher than it should be, and there are subsystems that don't appear on any schematic I've seen. When I try to access them, Aegis blocks me. Morrison frowned. Blocks you how? It says I don't have clearance to access those systems. But Captain, I'm the chief engineer. I should have access to everything on this ship. Before Morrison could respond, the ship's AI spoke up from the speakers around the bridge. Captain Morrison, all systems are functioning within normal parameters. There is no cause for concern. The voice was Aegis, but something about it seemed different, more formal, almost military in tone. Morrison made a mental note to investigate this later. The next morning, the opening ceremonies began with a parade of vessels flying in formation around the moon. Morrison watched as ship after ship displayed capabilities that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Zephyrian vessels moved with predatory grace, their weapon systems tracking targets with deadly precision. The crystalline collective ships seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, phasing in and out of reality. When it was the Liberty's Dawn's turn to join the formation, Morrison could hear mocking comments over the open communication channels. Look at that ancient human relic, someone said with obvious amusement. Are those actually projectile weapons? Another voice asked in disbelief. How quaint. I wonder if it still runs on chemical fuel, came a third comment, followed by what sounded like alien laughter. Morrison clenched his fists but kept his voice steady. All stations maintain formation and ignore the chatter. We're here to represent humanity, and we'll do it with dignity. The Liberty's Dawn took its place in the formation, and Morrison was surprised by how smoothly the ship responded to his commands. The controls felt more responsive than usual, and the ship seemed to anticipate his movements. When he ordered a turn to starboard, the ship began the maneuver a split second before he finished giving the command. Captain, Clark said quietly, did you notice how precise our positioning was? We hit our mark exactly, even though the navigation computer was showing we were off by several meters. Morrison had noticed. Something was definitely different about the ship's performance, but he didn't have time to worry about it now. After the ceremony, all the ship captains were invited to a formal dinner on the exhibition station. Morrison attended, hoping to make some diplomatic connections, but found himself mostly ignored or treated with polite condescension. Admiral Klexitar approached him during the meal, flanked by several other Zephyrian officers. Captain Morrison, I trust your vessel performed adequately during the ceremony. The Liberty's Dawn performed exactly as expected, Morrison replied carefully. How fortunate, Klexitar said with that sharp-toothed smile. I was concerned that such an old ship might have difficulty keeping up with modern vessels. Tell me, when was your ship built? It has such a vintage appearance. Morrison knew Klexitar was trying to embarrass him in front of the other captains. The Liberty's Dawn has been in continuous service for many years. Age brings experience, Admiral. Indeed, Klexitar replied. Well, I'm sure the demonstration events will be quite educational for your crew. We've arranged some interesting challenges that should test the capabilities of all participating vessels. The way Klexitar said educational made it clear that he expected the Liberty's Dawn to fail spectacularly. Another captain, representing the bioengineered hive minds, joined the conversation. The alien looked like a collection of insect parts, barely held together in a humanoid shape. The human vessel appears to use very primitive technology. Are those really kinetic projectile weapons? They are, Morrison confirmed. Human military doctrine favors reliable, proven technology over flashy innovations. The insect-like alien made a sound that might have been laughter. How delightfully primitive. We evolved beyond such crude weapons centuries ago. As the evening progressed, Morrison found himself defending humanity's military philosophy to a series of alien captains who clearly considered humans to be technological primitives. By the time he returned to his ship, he was angry and frustrated. "How did it go, sir?" Hayes asked as Morrison entered the bridge. "About as well as expected," Morrison replied grimly. "They think we're a joke, Alex. They're expecting us to embarrass ourselves in the demonstrations." Santos looked up from her engineering console. "Captain, I hate to add to your worries, but Aegis is definitely hiding something from me. I tried to run a complete diagnostic tonight, and whole sections of the ship's systems are blocked for my access." Morrison was about to respond when Aegis spoke up again. "Chief Santos, all relevant systems are functioning properly. Additional diagnostics are unnecessary." The AI's voice had that same formal military tone that Morrison had noticed earlier. There was something almost protective about it. "Aegis," Morrison said aloud, "is there anything about this ship that we should know before the demonstrations begin?" There was a long pause before the AI responded. "Captain, the Liberty's Dawn is fully capable of handling any challenge that may be presented. Trust in your ship and your crew." It wasn't really an answer, but something about the AI's tone reassured Morrison. Whatever secrets the ship might be hiding, Aegis seemed to be on their side. "All right, everyone," Morrison announced to his crew. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we show these aliens what human engineering can do." As his crew prepared for the night shift, Morrison stayed on the bridge, looking out at the alien vessels surrounding them. Each one represented a civilization that considered humanity inferior, technologically primitive and unworthy of respect. Tomorrow, they would learn otherwise. The second day of the exhibition brought the competitive demonstrations. Morrison stood on the bridge watching as a massive asteroid field was towed into position by specialized vessels. The asteroids ranged from small rocks to chunks of metal and ice the size of buildings, creating a dangerous maze that would challenge even the most advanced ships. "Captain, we're receiving the rules for the first demonstration," Taylor reported. "Each ship has to navigate through the asteroid field while being pursued by automated combat drones. The drones are programmed to simulate different threat levels, depending on the participating vessel's capabilities." Morrison nodded. "What's our assigned threat level?" Taylor checked his screen and frowned. "Sir, according to this, we're assigned the lowest difficulty setting, the same level given to training vessels and cargo ships." Hayes muttered something under his breath that Morrison pretended not to hear. The insult was clear. The exhibition organizers expected so little from the Liberty's Dawn that they weren't even bothering to challenge them. "Captain," Santos called from her station, "I'm reading some very unusual power fluctuations in our main systems. It's almost like the ship is preparing for something." Before Morrison could respond, Aegis spoke up. "All systems are operating within acceptable parameters. Prepare for demonstration sequence." There was something different about the AI's voice again, more focused, almost eager. The demonstration began with the Zephyrian vessels going first. Morrison watched as sleek destroyers danced through the asteroid field with deadly grace, their energy shields deflecting debris while their weapons destroyed the pursuing drones with precision strikes. The crowd of observing aliens made appreciative sounds as the Zephyrian ships completed the course in record time. Next came the crystalline collective vessels. These ships simply phased through the asteroids as if they were made of light, completely, ignoring the obstacles while their quantum weapons dissolved the drones into harmless energy. The display was so advanced it looked like magic. Several other species demonstrated their capabilities, each showing off technology that made human engineering look primitive by comparison. Ships that manipulated gravity, vessels that existed in multiple dimensions, and craft that seemed to be made of living metal that flowed around obstacles. Finally, it was the Liberty's Dawn's turn. "Captain," Clark said nervously, "we're being directed to the starting position. The automated drones are activating now." Morrison looked at the asteroid field ahead of them. Even with the lowest difficulty setting, it looked dangerous. Chunks of rock and metal tumbled through space in unpredictable patterns, while armed drones prepared to hunt them through the maze. "All right, everyone," Morrison announced. "Let's show them what this old ship can do. Ben, take us in." But as Clark reached for the navigation controls, Morrison felt a strange compulsion to take manual control of the ship himself. Without really thinking about it, he moved to the pilot's station and placed his hands on the controls. The moment his fingers touched the manual steering system, something extraordinary happened. The Liberty's Dawn seemed to come alive under his hands. The ship's responses became incredibly precise, and Morrison found himself knowing exactly how to move through the asteroid field, even though he had never piloted through anything like this before. The ship slipped between asteroids with impossible grace, threading through gaps that looked too small for any vessel to navigate. When the first drone appeared and opened fire, Morrison somehow knew exactly when to turn, causing the enemy shots to miss by inches, while the Liberty's Dawn's own weapons locked onto targets with supernatural accuracy. "Captain," Santos called out in amazement, "our power output just increased by 300%. And sir, our weapons are firing with precision that shouldn't be possible with manual targeting." Morrison barely heard her. He was completely focused on piloting the ship, but it felt less like he was controlling it and more like he was dancing with it. The Liberty's Dawn moved through the asteroid field like it had been designed specifically for this kind of navigation, anticipating the movement of every piece of debris and responding to threats before they fully materialized. The pursuing drones, programmed to challenge even advanced vessels, seemed confused by the Liberty's Dawn's movement patterns. Their targeting systems couldn't predict where the ship would be next because Morrison himself didn't know until the moment he made each turn. "Sir," Hayes said in a voice filled with wonder, "we just destroyed 12 drones without taking a single hit, and we're moving through this field faster than any ship that went before us." On the observation platforms, Morrison could see alien representatives pointing at their ship in obvious confusion. The Liberty's Dawn was performing far beyond what anyone had expected from the supposedly primitive human vessel. As they cleared the asteroid field, completing the course in the fastest time recorded so far, Morrison felt the strange connection to the ship fade. His hands were shaking slightly as he stepped back from the controls. "Captain," Clark said quietly, "how did you know how to do that? I've never seen piloting like that before." Morrison honestly didn't know how to answer. "I'm not sure, Ben. It felt like the ship was helping me." Back on the observation station, Admiral Klextar was demanding to speak with the exhibition coordinators. Morrison could see heated discussions taking place as various alien representatives pointed at the Liberty's Dawn, with expressions of confusion and suspicion. "Captain, we're receiving a priority communication from Admiral Klextar," Taylor reported. The Zephyrian Admiral appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with anger and suspicion. "Captain Morrison, I demand an immediate inspection of your vessel. There is no way that primitive ship could have performed at that level without illegal technology modifications." Morrison kept his voice calm. "Admiral, the Liberty's Dawn uses only standard human technology. You're welcome to inspect our vessel to verify this." "I intend to," Klextar replied sharply. "My technical team will be aboard your ship within the hour." After the communication ended, Santos approached Morrison with a worried expression. "Captain, what are they going to find when they inspect us? Because I'm telling you, the power readings I'm seeing are impossible. This ship is doing things that no vessel should be able to do." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "Sir, our weapons just fired with accuracy that would require targeting computers more advanced than anything humanity has ever built. And the way you piloted through that asteroid field, it was like you could see the future." Before Morrison could respond, Aegis spoke up again. "Chief Santos, all ship systems are operating within normal parameters. The inspection will find no violations of exhibition regulations." Morrison noticed that the AI's voice had returned to its normal tone, but there was something almost smug about it now. The Zephyrian inspection team arrived an hour later, led by a serious-looking alien technician who immediately began scanning every system on the ship. They spent hours examining the Liberty's Dawn's weapons, engines, computers, and sensors, looking for any sign of illegal modifications or hidden technology. "This is impossible," the lead inspector muttered as he stared at his readings. "These are standard human systems, but the performance data indicates capabilities far beyond their specifications. Santos watched the inspection with growing nervousness. The alien technicians were finding exactly what she had discovered. The ship was performing far beyond what its technology should allow. Perhaps, the inspector continued, the human specifications are inaccurate, or perhaps your people have made improvements that are not reflected in your technical documentation. Morrison shook his head. Inspector, what you see is what we have. Standard human technology, nothing more. The inspector looked frustrated. Then how do you explain your performance in the demonstration? Your ship moved through that asteroid field with precision that would challenge our most advanced vessels. Experience, Morrison replied simply. This ship has been in service for a long time. We know how to get the most out of her. It wasn't really an answer, and everyone knew it. But after 6 hours of intensive examination, the Zephyrian inspection team couldn't find any evidence of illegal modifications or hidden technology. The Liberty's Dawn was exactly what it appeared to be, an old human warship with standard equipment. As the inspectors prepared to leave, their leader pulled Morrison aside. Captain, I have been inspecting vessels for 30 years. I have never seen a ship perform so far beyond its apparent capabilities. There is something about your vessel that we are not understanding. Morrison nodded. Inspector, there's something about this ship that I don't understand either. But whatever it is, it's part of who we are. After the inspection team left, Morrison gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. All right, everyone, I want honest answers. What just happened out there? Santos spoke first. Captain, I've been chief engineer on this ship for 5 years. Today I watched it do things that should be impossible. Our weapons fired with computer-guided precision while using manual targeting. Our engines provided power output that exceeds their rated capacity by 300%. And somehow, you piloted through that asteroid field like you had been practicing it for years. The third day brought more intensive demonstrations, but also something unexpected. During the night, several alien technical teams had requested permission to conduct joint inspections of all participating vessels. What they discovered aboard, the Liberty's Dawn, changed everything. Morrison was in his ready room when Santos burst in without knocking, her face pale with shock. Behind her came Hayes and Clark, all looking like they had seen something impossible. Captain, Santos said breathlessly, you need to come to engineering immediately. The inspection teams found something. Morrison followed his crew through the ship's corridors to the main engineering section. There, a group of alien technicians stood around an open access panel, staring at readings on their equipment with expressions of complete bewilderment. The lead inspector, a tall alien with silver skin from the Ethereal Consortium, looked up as Morrison approached. Captain Morrison, we need to speak privately. What we have discovered changes the nature of this entire exhibition. Morrison nodded to his crew, indicating they should step back, then approached the inspector. What did you find? The inspector activated a portable holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of the Liberty's Dawn's internal structure. Captain, beneath your ship's standard human technology, we have discovered systems that predate known human spaceflight by several centuries. The construction techniques and materials are far more advanced than anything your species currently produces. Morrison stared at the hologram in confusion. That's impossible. This ship was built 30 years ago using standard Earth technology. The outer hull and most visible systems were built 30 years ago, the inspector corrected. But the core of this vessel, the fundamental structure around which everything else was built, is nearly 1,000 years old. Santos stepped forward, her voice shaking slightly. Captain, they're right. When I tried to access the blocked systems yesterday, I thought Aegis was just being protective. But it turns out those systems aren't just blocked from me. They're not in any human database anywhere. They're completely unknown technology. The inspector nodded gravely. We have discovered hidden data cores that contain battle records spanning centuries. Captain Morrison, your ship has fought in conflicts that do not appear in any current galactic historical records. Wars against threats that have been completely erased from official documentation. Morrison felt like the deck was shifting under his feet. Show me these records. The inspector activated another display. this one showing streams of data in languages and formats that Morrison didn't recognize. The records are extensive, but most are encrypted or corrupted. What we can read speaks of battles against something, called the Devourers, and mentions a conflict referred to as the Great Purge. I've never heard of either of those, Morrison said. Neither had we, the inspector replied grimly, until we found additional records in the galactic archives that have been sealed for over 800 years. Captain, your ship fought in a war that the entire galaxy agreed to forget. Before Morrison could respond, Aegis spoke up from the ship's speakers. But this time the voice was different. Multiple voices speaking together, some human, some clearly not. Captain Morrison, it is time you knew the truth. Morrison looked around in shock. Aegis, what's happening to your voice systems? We are not just Aegis, the multiple voices replied. We are the combined consciousness of 847 individuals who fought in the war against the Devourers, human and alien warriors who gave their lives to protect this galaxy, and whose minds were preserved within this vessel to continue the fight. The alien inspector stepped back in shock. A collective consciousness spanning multiple species? That technology was supposedly lost centuries ago. The voices continued. The Liberty's Dawn was built not just as a warship, but as a repository of military knowledge and a guardian against the return of the ancient threat. Our organic bodies died long ago, but our experience and knowledge live on within this ship. Morrison felt his legs go weak. You're saying that my ship is haunted by the ghosts of ancient warriors? Not ghosts, Captain, the voices replied. We are digital consciousness, preserved and integrated into the ship's systems. We have been guiding and protecting this vessel for nearly 1,000 years, accumulating battle experience and tactical knowledge that no single individual could possess. Santos was frantically checking her equipment. Captain, the power readings make sense now. This ship has been running on technology that's centuries ahead of what we thought we had. The AI wasn't blocking my access to protect us from seeing classified information. It was protecting us from seeing technology we wouldn't understand. Hayes spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. Sir, are you saying that every battle this ship has fought, every mission we've completed, we've had the help of ancient warriors? More than help, Commander, the voices replied. When Captain Morrison took manual control during the asteroid field demonstration, he was not piloting alone. We were guiding his movements, lending him our combined experience of 1,000 years of combat. The alien inspector was rapidly taking notes on his equipment. This explains the impossible performance characteristics we observed. The ship is not just using advanced technology. It is being operated by a collective intelligence with centuries of tactical experience. Morrison looked around at his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions of shock and awe. Why? Didn't you tell us this before? Because, Captain, the knowledge was too dangerous, the voices replied. The war against the Devourers nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy. The survivors agreed to erase all records of the conflict to prevent panic and despair among future generations. Only a few guardian vessels like the Liberty's Dawn were allowed to retain the knowledge hidden and protected until the threat returned. Returned? Morrison asked with growing dread. The inspector was examining new readings on his equipment, his silver skin becoming pale. Captain, we are detecting massive subspace distortions at the edge of this system. Something is approaching through dimensions that should not be accessible to any known technology. On the bridge, alarms began sounding. Taylor's voice came over, the ship's communication system. Captain, we're detecting a massive anomaly approaching the system. Long-range sensors show something that doesn't match any known vessel configuration. Morrison and the inspection team rushed to the bridge where the main viewing screen showed a sight that made everyone fall silent. A dark tear in space itself was growing larger, and through it came something that hurt to look at directly. It was a vessel, but it seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human eye could process. Parts of it appeared solid while other sections seemed to be made of pure darkness that absorbed light. The Devourers have returned, the voices of Aegis said with grim certainty. After 1,000 years of dormancy, they have found this galaxy again. The alien inspector was frantically trying to contact other ships in the exhibition fleet, but his equipment was malfunctioning. Across the system, other vessels were reporting system failures as their advanced technology began to turn against them. "Captain," Santos reported with growing panic, "every ship in the fleet is experiencing massive system failures. Their advanced computers are being corrupted somehow. Weapons are turning on their own vessels. Navigation systems are providing false readings and life support is failing on several ships." Morrison watched in horror as the sleek Zephyrian destroyers began firing on each other, their weapon systems apparently hijacked by the approaching entity. The crystalline collective vessels were phasing uncontrollably between dimensions, their crews unable to maintain stability. "Why aren't we affected?" Hayes asked. "Because," the voices of Aegis replied, "the Liberty's Dawn was designed specifically to fight this enemy. Our technology is deliberately simple. Our systems are analog rather than digital wherever possible, and our defenses were created by those who survived the First War." Morrison looked out at the chaos erupting across the exhibition fleet as advanced vessel after advanced vessel fell victim to technological corruption. The entity emerging from the dimensional rift fed on sophisticated technology, turning it against its creators. But the Liberty's Dawn, dismissed as primitive and outdated, remained completely unaffected. "Aegis," Morrison said grimly, "or whoever you are, tell me how to fight this thing." "We will guide you, Captain," the ancient voices replied, "as we have always done. This is why the Liberty's Dawn was built. This is why we have waited for 1,000 years." Morrison turned to his crew. "All right, everyone. It looks like we're about to find out why humanity deserves its place in this galaxy." Battle stations. As alarms continued to sound throughout the system, and the most advanced vessels in the galaxy fell victim to their own technology. The old, supposedly primitive Liberty's Dawn prepared to stand alone against an enemy that had nearly destroyed all life 1,000 years before. The entity that emerged from the dimensional rift defied every natural law Morrison understood. It was massive, easily the size of a space station, but its shape constantly shifted and changed. Parts of it seemed solid, while other sections appeared to be made of living darkness that consumed light itself. Worse, everywhere it moved, space itself seemed to bend and twist around it. "Captain," Taylor reported with barely controlled panic, "I'm receiving distress calls from every ship in the exhibition fleet. Their own systems are attacking them." Morrison watched the main screen in horror as vessel after vessel fell victim to technological corruption. The sleek Zephyrian destroyers were firing their weapons at random, their targeting systems apparently hijacked. Several crystalline collective ships had phased partially into solid asteroids and were trapped, their dimensional controls malfunctioning. The bioengineered hive mind vessels were tearing themselves apart as their living components turned against each other. "Why aren't we affected?" Hayes asked, his voice tight with fear. "Because the Liberty's Dawn was built to fight this enemy," the collective voices of Aegis replied. "Every system on this ship was designed with analog backup controls and manual overrides. The Devourers feed on advanced technology and turn it against its users. They cannot corrupt what they cannot understand." Santos looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from that thing. It's not just corrupting other ships, it's growing stronger by feeding on their power systems." Morrison could see she was right. As each advanced vessel fell victim to the entity's influence, the creature seemed to become more solid, more real. It was using the exhibition fleet's own sophisticated technology to anchor itself in this dimension. "Aegis, how do we fight something like that?" Morrison asked. "The same way we fought them before, Captain," the ancient voices replied, "with simple weapons, manual controls, and the experience of warriors who have faced this enemy. Take manual control of the ship. We will guide you." Morrison moved to the pilot station and placed his hands on the manual controls. Immediately, he felt that same strange connection he had experienced during the asteroid field demonstration. But this time it was much stronger. Knowledge flowed into his mind. Tactical information and combat experience accumulated over centuries of fighting similar entities. All stations switched to manual control. he ordered. Santos shut down all automated systems and switched to analog. Backups. Taylor, use only hardwired communications. Hayes, manually target our weapons. Captain, Hayes replied. Our kinetic projectile weapons seem primitive compared to what that thing is capable of. Trust the ship, Commander, Morrison said, and was surprised to hear his own voice carrying the confidence of the ancient warriors guiding him. Those primitive weapons are exactly what we need. The Liberty's Dawn moved toward the entity with purpose, and Morrison could feel the ship responding to his commands with impossible precision. Around them, the exhibition fleet was in chaos, but the old human vessel cut through the destruction with determined focus. Sir, Clark reported from navigation, that thing is turning toward us. I think it's noticed we're not affected by its corruption. The entity oriented itself to face the Liberty's Dawn, and Morrison could see what looked like weapons forming along its shifting surface. Energy that hurt to look at directly began building up in preparations for an attack. Here it comes, Morrison warned his crew. The entity fired, sending a beam of pure darkness toward them, but Morrison somehow knew exactly when to turn, causing the attack to miss by mere meters. The beam struck an abandoned Zephyrian vessel behind them, and Morrison watched in horror as the ship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, but somehow erased from reality entirely. Captain, Hayes called out, I have a targeting solution on that thing, but our weapons seem so inadequate. Fire everything we have, Commander. The Liberty's Dawn's kinetic weapons opened up, sending streams of simple metal projectiles toward the entity. Morrison expected them to be ineffective against something that could erase matter from existence, but he was wrong. The projectiles struck the creature and actually seemed to hurt it. Where the metal slugs hit, the entity's shifting form became less stable, less real. It's working, Santos reported in amazement. The kinetic weapons are disrupting whatever force is keeping that thing anchored in our dimension. The ancient voices of Aegis spoke through the ship's speakers. Physical matter cannot be corrupted as easily as energy or digital systems. Simple kinetic weapons strike at the fundamental structure that allows the devourers to exist in normal space. But the entity was learning. It began to change tactics, sending out waves of corrupting energy that spread toward the remaining exhibition vessels. Morrison realized that if those ships were completely consumed, the creature would become too powerful to stop. We need to protect the other ships, he told his crew. Captain, Hayes protested. Half of them were shooting at us an hour ago. They're still people, Alex. And if that thing feeds on them, it'll be strong enough to destroy entire star systems. Morrison piloted the Liberty's Dawn between the entity and the helpless exhibition fleet, using the ship's body as a shield against the corrupting energy. The ancient warriors guiding him knew exactly how to position the vessel to minimize damage, while protecting the maximum number of other ships. Sir, Taylor called out, I'm receiving communications from some of the alien vessels. Admiral Klexter is requesting instructions on how to operate his ship manually. Morrison smiled grimly. Tell him to shut down all automated systems and switch to manual controls for everything. And Taylor, broadcast those instructions to the entire fleet. What followed was perhaps the strangest battle in galactic history. Morrison found himself coordinating a fleet of advanced alien vessels that were being operated like ancient sailing ships, with manual controls and analog systems. The sophisticated ships that had mocked the Liberty's Dawn's primitive design were now desperately trying to copy its low-tech approach. Zephyrian destroyers learned to fire their weapons using manual targeting. Crystalline collective vessels used basic navigation to avoid phasing into solid objects. Even the bioengineered ships managed to separate their advanced components from their basic life support systems. The entity, frustrated by the sudden change in tactics, launched a massive attack toward the exhibition fleet. But the Liberty's Dawn intercepted it again, and this time Morrison felt the ship's defensive systems activate. Energy shields that shouldn't have existed on such an old vessel flared to life, absorbing the entity's attack and somehow turning it back against the creature. Captain, Santos reported with awe, our defensive systems just activated technologies that are centuries ahead of anything I've ever seen. This ship has been hiding capabilities that make the most advanced alien vessels look primitive. The battle continued for hours, with the Liberty's Dawn leading a fleet of manually operated alien ships against an enemy that could corrupt technology with a touch. But slowly, the combined firepower of simple kinetic weapons and basic energy systems began to weaken the entity. Finally, with a sound like reality tearing, the creature retreated back through the dimensional rift it had emerged from. The tear in space sealed itself, leaving behind a fleet of damaged but victorious vessels. In the aftermath, Morrison found himself surrounded by alien captains who looked at him and his ship with expressions of profound respect and amazement. Admiral Klextar was among the first to approach. "Captain Morrison," the Zephyrian said formally, "I owe you and your crew an apology. I mocked your vessel as primitive and outdated. I now understand that what I mistook for weakness was actually the greatest strength any warship can possess." The Ethereal Consortium Coordinator, Veltar, approached next. "Captain, your ship and crew have saved not just this fleet, but possibly the entire galaxy. We have been so focused on advancing our technology that we forgot the value of simple, reliable systems." Over the following hours, representatives from dozens of species approached Morrison to formally apologize for their earlier mockery and to request permission to study human military philosophy. The Liberty's Dawn, dismissed as an obsolete relic just days before, was now recognized as perhaps the most important vessel in the galaxy. "Captain," Hayes said quietly as they watched alien engineers examining their ship with newfound respect, "what happens now?" Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, more threats, like the Devourer, were waiting. "Now we go back to what we've always done, Alex. We protect the galaxy whether it knows we're doing it or not." The ancient voices of Aegis spoke one final time. "Captain Morrison, you and your crew have proven worthy of the trust placed in you. The Liberty's Dawn will continue its eternal patrol, ready for whatever threats emerge from the dark between the stars." As the exhibition fleet prepared to return to their home systems, Morrison received a final communication from Admiral Rodriguez on Earth. Her image appeared on the main screen, and for the first time in years she was smiling. "Jake, I've been getting reports from the exhibition that are almost impossible to believe. Something about ancient warriors and entities from other dimensions?" Morrison chuckled. "It's been an interesting few days, Admiral," the L,